You are listening to Beyond the Verse, a Star Citizen podcast. A show dedicated to Cloud Imperium games, Star Citizen, and Squadron 42. Whether you fight, explore, unite, and or trade, we bring you news, updates, interviews, reviews, and analysis. So sit back, relax, grab yourself a pour of Radegast, and join us as we go Beyond the Verse.
Launch sequence activated.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Beyond the Verse, Star Citizen podcast. I'm your host, Solus. Today's episode is episode 78, the final patch in Star Citizen. On today's episode, our segments are going to include my reactions to both the 324.2 PTU testing and the tech preview channel testing as well. There is a lot to unpack with those two experiences. Can't wait to get in them with you today. I actually did both. I actually was able to participate in both testing, which I feel like is rare for me nowadays with work and everything else, but I was able to get into .2. I was able to get into the tech preview channel. I'm also going to react to the CitizenCon schedule that was released yesterday, a day before most of us were expecting it. So, yes, only 7 days away from the event, but a week to discuss nonetheless. It was also Star Citizen's 12th birthday, which was on Citizen Day. So we want to take a second and celebrate their birthday. I have a funny little tweet. Y'all know me by now. I'm a freaking nerd when it comes to numbers and Excel spreadsheets. So there's a fun little birthday thing that I've developed for Star Citizen, but that happened as well. We have the Squadron 42 monthly report, which is grossly short. And I think we do read into that. I think there is reasons to read into the length of Squadron 42's monthly report. Whitley's guide, the Idris, with a couple of tinfoil hat predictions. We do have our Day of the Vara giveaway. So it closed as of last night at midnight, 163 entries. We're not going to read all 163 entries. I got to figure out a better way of doing that. But we will be giving away the Terrapin with the Purple Haze livery, lifetime insurance, and the Star Citizen game package. So all that in this jam-packed episode. Well, I hope this finds everybody well, wherever you are listening to this, on the road, traveling. Maybe you're listening to this on the way to CitizenCon. Last year around this time, I created an episode called like the CitizenCon guide or handbook. I'm going to do the same thing. So next episode that I record, it's going to be all things preparing for CitizenCon. I'm not going. I know a lot of people who are, but we'll get into some of those predictions and what we can expect from a virtual perspective. So excited about that. It's been a busy week. Yes, work. Yes, all of that. But like I said, I was actually able to detach myself from a lot of those obligations and was able to put myself into the tech preview channel. So it was a fun week. Can't wait to get into it with you today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into from the community. Here we go.
Incoming message.
Alrighty. At the end of every episode, I repeat myself, and I'm going to continue doing so. I love polls. I love engaging with the community. That if I were to put a mission statement together for what Beyond the Verse podcast is, it's tying the community into content creation and into game development. And so I love polling. I love asking questions to the community. So at the end of every episode over on Spotify, I ask both a poll and of course I leave the comment section open for your feedback. So I'm going to share my screen for those of you on YouTube. The poll for last episode was, did you purchase one or more of the Purple Haze liveries? And this was a select all that apply. So kind of a new version of polling, or what we're used to doing. But I was just curious, out of the Sulin, the Zeus, the Carrick, the Terrapin, which did you choose, or did you not choose any? And I would love, I wish there was a way to put the comment section directly tied to this, because for the 37.5% that said no, they did not, was it the ship selection, or was it because the paint was so dynamic or so kind of out there? Again, the purple haze paint, it's that base green with the base purple with the green splatter, almost looks like ooze or whatever. So maybe that was too dynamic, maybe that was too much for people's taste, or no one was really interested in the Sulin Zeus Carrack or Terrapin. So super interested in that, but a pretty fair balance of selection from there. So the Terrapin, the Carrack, and the Sulin all came in at 16.7%, so 4 votes total on each, and then only 12.5% or 3 votes went in for the Zeus. So again, I think that's super interesting. The Zeus kind of makes sense because it's not out yet. And so I don't know. I can't imagine a lot of people wanting to buy paint for a ship they haven't experienced. So my assumption, if I am going to assume, is that they're waiting for 324.2 to drop, which should happen during the day of the Vara event. So like in the next, I'm thinking today, but in the next couple of days, it should be out at the same time. So they fly the Zeus, they like it, they will probably then purchase the purple haze paint. Total assumption at that point. Let's go over to the comment section real quick. It's a really short one. We had 4 published, and then we'll go into the emails. So this first one goes to Anna, or Prime Entity. Did you know that you can use a cargo elevator to store, not retrieve small ground vessels? So I did not know that, nor have I been able to test it. That's not like a weird, I don't trust. I just haven't been able to verify. So super interesting. I find it odd that you'd be able to store it but not call it up. Now I know that's the end state. The end state, especially if you have an extra large hangar, you've got a massive freight elevator pulling up like your RSI Lynx or Ursa. The freight elevator makes a lot more sense than having to juggle the main hangar elevator for like your massive 890 jump and then your small tiny RSI Lynx. That is annoying. So I hope that's the case. Can't wait for it to actually come to fruition. All right, so the next quote goes to 12J Result. So 12J Result says, quote, "Man, tired of the Terrapin hate." Yes, I have 2 main dislikes, and it's Drake and Terrapin. And they're both okay, I will say this, they're both comical. I don't legitimately despise Drake. I don't legitimately despise the Terrapin. And so I'll take this comment to heart. I'll tone it back a little bit because I myself get kind of annoyed at always bringing up my distaste for the Terrapin. It just needs its loop. It needs its purpose in the game. I'm a cargo guy. I created an organization called Soul Provision that is based on cargo hauling and on all things delivery, right? The fact that you can't put a grid, or it doesn't have a grid for putting things onto the Terrapin. But again, to my point, that's not its purpose. It's not a cargo hauler. It just needs its role in the game. I can see it having an extreme strategic purpose in org play. Absolutely. Next quote goes to Dakota Riley. Quote, "I'm going to be up to 2 a.m. Eastern time for CitizenCon. You should let Groza and I take over your YouTube channel so we can drop some hot takes." Joking, of course. "I am hyped for the event and I'm thinking about doing a rebroadcast of it, or maybe I'll take notes and start a podcast. I'm also loving the Zeus and the PTU and the paints for it as well. Love this time of year, but it's such a busy one. Hoping to see 324.2 live this week after the meshing test, then 4.0 Evocati next week, and open PTU at CitizenCon." So Dakota Riley is our kind of in-house tinfoil hat member, which I love. I love. They're really active in the Leaks channel in our organization, but a lot of hot takes there, right? Love this time of the year, but it's a busy one. Hoping that 324.2 goes live this week, Evocati next week for 4.0, etc. Yes. So I will cross my hot takes here in a couple of minutes. One that is proving to not come true, which is 324.2's release. I'll get into that here in a second, of course. But you do you, man. Like, if you need any support in setting up a podcast or setting up a YouTube channel, like, I will gladly help out. I love seeing growth within our community. And then the last quote goes to Sean. Quote, "The Terrapin is a wonderful ship. In fact, it's one of my favorites. I've used it as a shuttle for my friend's 890 jump, and it has shields capable of getting into the prison tunnels without much damage. Personally, I can't stand the darkness and smoke in the back. Let me see the ship details. Other than that, it is a fantastic ship." Again, Terrapin just needs its role. I agree. I agree with all the above. It's got massive HP, health points. It's got massive HP. It has that radar capability. It has the potential of being a great ship. Not yet. All right. Enough of that. Let's go to the emails. And again, I don't share my screen for the emails because it docks. Whoever sends the email puts their email address out there and any sort of signature stuff. So I just want to I'll just be very respectful here. But the first email is from Groza Parks. First off, I love you. Thank you for being such an active member of Soul Provision and an officer of Soul Provision. But they write, "Dear Mr. Solus, leaving Instagram, question mark. If you leave Instagram, how will you receive all the memes I send you? Please advise." So every month I do a recap of like the performance of our podcast. So last week's episode, I did cover September's review. And I did make mention, I've said it a few times now, where Instagram is this redheaded stepchild. I don't know how to make it successful. I'm doing all the things, putting all the clips and videos and screenshots and everything, and it's just a dud. I'm at 250, I don't know, subscribers there. And so I don't know. I continue to say, if I'm going to drop a social media platform, it's going to be Instagram. But I think, just to directly respond to this email, I think what's going to happen is I'm going to still use Instagram, but on my monthly reviews, I'm just going to delete that section and make more room for my guests, right? So my guest blocks is at the bottom right. Having like the center to bottom right gives me more space to put the names and the episodes that they're speaking on or guest hosts on. So I see more value in that than I do this kind of stale, flatlined Instagram. So I hope that answers your question, Groza. And then last, we have Prime Entity again writing an email asking or telling, please record the quote murder of infinity like you do on podcast. I asked for clarification, but in short, we talked about Soul Provisions. Again, that's our in-game organization. We talked about our org's goals or what we plan to do in October. And one of the last Thursday nights, we're going to do the murder on the Elegance of the Void. Our 890 jump is called the Elegance of the Void, and we're thinking about doing like a murder mystery. And so I think that's what they're talking about, and they confirmed. But recording that on the podcast, making it spooky and scary, and putting a introduction and an outro. Yes, that is the intent. We're gonna have a lot of fun with this event. I've already seen the plan of action. There's some great ideas that are floating around for the execution of this event. Can't wait. Stay tuned. It'll be a bonus episode on our podcast. So there you go. Again, that's contact@beyondtheversehq.com. If you ever want to write us anything, I try my best to respond. I think I have, up to this point, responded to every single one. But if we end up getting inundated, like we did for the giveaway, 163 entries, what I've promised of reading every entry, I simply can't do. We're not going to have a 3-hour episode where y'all are just listening to me read messages. So I got to figure out what that looks like if we end up blowing up via email. But until that point, I'll read all comments. I'll read all emails. We'll talk about the poll. I think it's engaging and I think it's fun. It keeps things based around you. Speaking of which, I want to celebrate, and this is before we get into This Week in Star Citizen, I want to celebrate our YouTube channel crossing over the 800 mark. So I want to thank everyone for going over to YouTube and also subscribing there. I think we're now at 805 or 810 at this point. But after 313 videos, over 800 subscribers. And again, that's about you. So thank you for doing both. Help us out if you haven't already. Go on over there, like and subscribe, come back over to podcast. It just helps us get our name out there and it helps us grow our community. Speaking of growing our community, Star Citizen was gracious enough, like the company CIG was gracious enough to add me to their collection of content creators via Twitter. We already talked about them bringing me on board as somebody to give away giveaways and those campaigns, but this was a small gesture that it kind of affirms, it validates kind of what we're doing as a community, as a Soul Provision and Beyond the Verse community. So I'm one of 100. I think it's less than 100, but I'm one that they added to a group. And again, I just want to say thank you to CIG and thank you for everybody here making it possible. Again, it doesn't happen unless you are subscribed as one of the 800, unless you are following as one of the 2,100 individuals over on Twitter. So thank you kindly. All right. Let's start with a birthday wish. Let's do that. Let's start with birthday. It's 12 years. Star Citizen has turned 12 years old. So however many days it is, 4,300 days, whatever that is, they broke ground. They started development. 12 years later, we are here. And that was yesterday. So that was October 10th. Today's October 11th. And so I just want to say happy birthday, but not only just the kind of superfluous happy birthday or the arbitrary happy birthday, but it's also thank you, CIG, for what you have done. Now you can interpret this as white knighting and you can get effed, right? Don't give two shits in this next couple of seconds. Thank you for putting in all the hard work that you do. I work at Amazon. I know what peak season is like. So what you're going through getting ready for CitizenCon, I get it. And I thank you for all that you're doing. On top of all that they're doing, they also ran a massive tech preview test. And that was engaging. Like it was an entire, at least from the time that I was tracking, it was like 8 hours worth of nonstop, we're taking it offline to do hot fixes and we're going to implement a new build and push it forward. And it was just nonstop all day yesterday. And that's on top of getting ready for one of the biggest events, actually the biggest event that they do each year. And this one's going to be the biggest, right? This is going to be the biggest CitizenCon. And so the execution, the amount of effort it takes for 12 years and the growth that we've seen up to that point, I want to acknowledge and just take a second, again, just to acknowledge that. So here's my nerdum. I'm going to open up this image. I love numbers. So if you're looking at my screen, whether you're on Spotify watching the video or over on YouTube, yeah, this is just me. I love this shit. So in Excel, I ended up building out a spreadsheet that calculated like how long it's been in development per planet. So the box you see on the far left is all Earth data, right? So today, at the time of taking the screenshot, today was October 10th. Days in development, 4,383 days. 626 weeks in development, 365 months, right? Which is interesting. That's how many days there are in a year, but 365 months or 12 years of development. And then what I think is funny is like, it depends on perspective. Here's kind of the joke through my messaging is it's all about perspective, right? Like we're either happy with us getting ready for 324.2 or we're happy with getting ready for 4.0 or we're mad about it, but it's all about perspective. And so I make a joke out of it where, it's been almost 50 years in development according to the planet Mercury, or it's been only 0.05 years for the planet Pluto. So if we're talking years, I don't know, it's perspective. Is it 12 years Earth or is it as high as 50 or as low as 0.05? I don't know. This is my sense of humor. Welcome to my world. But happy birthday. Thank you for everything that you do. Let's get into this week in Star Citizen. Here we go. Oh, and it was a busy week. Not according to this article, but it was a very, very busy week. Happy Monday, everyone. Alpha 324.2 is now with our Wave 1 testers, and we want to give a massive thank you for all the feedback so far. We've made a bunch of tweaks during the P2 cycle and have been keeping a close eye on everything you're sending our way, so keep it coming. The team's hard at work on improving stability and getting ready to open up to more waves. On the Alpha 4.0 front, the team is making solid progress and is looking forward to releasing Evocati. More news on that later. New frontiers await in Pyro, and we can't wait to take the jump with you. There's a little tinfoil hat thing about that sentence that I will get into. I think it's fine, but just new frontiers await in Pyro. All right, back to the article. CitizenCon is just 13 sleeps away, and the team could not be more excited to see you all in Manchester. Connecting with the community in person is something our team looks forward to every year, and with this year's event being hosted just down the street from our largest studio, there will be no shortage of CIG in attendance. For those hunting for more info, stay tuned. We'll be releasing the full presentation, schedule, and details very soon, which they did yesterday. And for those traveling from afar, here's a tip. Don't wait until the night before to pack. Don't be like me. Either way, we'll see you there. Yeah, if you're not already packing, you are the opposite of me, because that would kill my anxiety. All right, so the bullet points for this week. Tuesday, lore post, the Whitley's Guide, Aegis Idris. On Wednesday, the Squadron 42 monthly report, and that's literally it. So 2 bullet points for the entire week. I read this on Monday, and I was like, well, this is going to be boring. This week was anything but boring. Here's proof. So here's my screen. Patch notes. Look at all the patch notes in the last 7 days. So 7 days ago, after my recording, they moved 324.2 from Evocati into Wave 1. In the last 7 days, it went from Wave 1 to Wave 2 to Wave 4 to all waves. Literally every wave, everybody can participate in 324.2 less than a week away, or less than a week from when this started going into the PTU for us. And so here was my hot take, my first hot take of the week. At this cadence, and I stand by this. At this cadence, I had every expectation that before recording, or at least before the end of my recording for this episode, we would have 324.2 in the live PU. And everything looked that way. Everything was indicative that it was going to release very soon. Not a lot of huge issues. Now, again, huge, keyword huge, which is relative, but not a lot of huge issues. There's a couple of kiosk issues. The Constellation Phoenix Emerald specifically, because I don't have any other connies, but like it was weird. You'd call it up into your hangar, it would miss its cargo elevator and its main entry elevator, but then like it would also birth these missiles that were just scattered across the hangar. Like there was no way to get inside of the Phoenix Emerald. I don't know if that's the case with any other connie. I don't. But like there was a couple of issues there. A lot of concerns about missions, but missions have been turned off. And so, okay, let me just say this. The PTU is very, very specific on what they're testing. In fact, let me just open up these notes real quick, share my screen. So this is the latest PTU note, 2 days ago. Testing feedback focus. This is all that is turned on. And so if what I'm about to say is not what you were trying to do, it was going to be glitched. It was going to be a bad experience. And so obviously stability and bug fixes, but the Zeus, ES, and CL, vehicle HUD and MFD rework, the character creator in the faces, beards, tattoos, and hair, the new acidic and rock cave systems, flight tuning and archetype balance, quantum field adjustments, and new arena commander updates. I don't see missions in here. And I'm not trying to be a smartass, but there were so many people upset, like, things are broken. I'm trying to do XYZ and it's broken. Yeah, a PTU, for the most part, they do open it up. It's not like Evocati, it's not like a tech preview where it's very, very specific. But the PTU is designed with a purpose. It's not just the game before it goes live, right? So there were missions that were deliberately turned off. But the main point of this PTU test is that it's on 4.0's build. They completely rehauled everything on the back end to get ready for server meshing. And so this is the 4.0 build without server meshing. That's the true purpose of this 324.2 PTU. And so, I don't know, for me, I would get on. I would maybe go to my hangar, but for the most part, I'd find myself a really nice scenic chair in Orison or New Babbage or wherever. I would sit down and I would just, I would turn on the server stats on the top right hand corner of my screen and just exist. Now, of course, this is while I'm working and I can't really get up and actually do missions, but like just being part of that build was important to me. And then, of course, I went in to test flying the Zeus and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Expectation management. There was also a lot of questions about, the shard count and their shard player count, and if there was, how many servers were going to be on this shard. And so we'll get into that here in a second. I actually will take a couple minutes to go through the explanation of all that when we get to the tech preview. But read the patch notes. That's not me being a jackass. Like, there are jackasses in the community that will ignore you when you ask a very simple question, and they'll force you to go to the patch notes because they get all butthurt and emotional about having to repeat themselves. I'm not trying to be that for this podcast, but go to the patch notes and just read really quick the testing feedback and focus, and that'll get you ready for success when you try something like the PTU. I have a couple of polls within Twitter that are based around 324.2. There was a lot of discussion, like community engagement around the Zeus and around what we were experiencing. So way back, like basically Saturday the 5th, I think the 5th was Saturday. Anyways, I'm going to go through a couple of polls, and I think it's interesting to pull from the community here. But for the 324.2 testing, will you be testing out patch 324.2 in the PTU, or are you going to be waiting for your first experience to be on the live PU? 169 votes, right? 37.3% say no, but for other reasons. So like no, they usually don't play in the PTU. They prefer the first experience to be in the live world. So 37.3%. And then we have 33.7% that says yes, they will be trying it. They want to get into the 4.0 build. Again, the build, not server meshing. They wanted to get into the build. They want to see the new MFDs and HUDs impacts, which I'll get into my reactions in a second about the freaking HUD. But then the third option was no, because the Zeus was absent. Okay, so 29% said no because the Zeus was absent. Okay. A little bit of drama from the community, but there seems to be an overall discourse with Evocati. And if you don't believe me, go to Greasy Khaleesi. And again, I would love to have them on the podcast at some point. So if you're listening, reach out. If you go over to their social media feed, they're very vocal about Evocati and how it's basically like a content creator fluff, right? So if you're really responsive on the issue council, or if you're a very well-known content creator, you're in Evocati. And there's a couple reasons for that. I'm not going to get into it. I don't work at CIG, so it's also not my place to get into. But there's an overall perception where, okay, so likes and attention and special treatment, that's Evocati. Well, they had access to the Zeus from the very beginning. So Evocati was able to, test out the Zeus and the PTU. They leaked, right, wrong, or indifferent, they leaked images and videos. It's fine, whatever. But then once it went to wave 1, it was the Evocati who could fly the Zeus and the owners. But you had to be the owner of the CL or the ES. So I'm wave 1, but I only have the MR, right? The military variant. I only have the MR. Excuse me. So even though I was wave 1, I was able to get in, I wasn't able to fly the Zeus. It wasn't until wave 2 and subscribers had access to the 2 ships that I was able to actually make my video and whatnot. Which, speaking of that, I think that's my next... Yeah, so let me just have this playing in the background while we talk about it. So I made this cool little video about the walkthrough. You can, again, see my screen so you can watch the video. But the Zeus, when you're able to get in it, I am more of an advocate today than I was leading up to this. That the Zeus it's a phenomenal ship, and honestly, it's the future of Star Citizen ships. It's incredible. And we'll just start from the very beginning here in a couple seconds, and I'm just going to walk you through my thoughts. But you have to get, for me personally, you have to get the Concierge Solstice paint, somehow get that on your ship, because there's no better color combination. That is a gorgeous, gorgeous ship. So if you're looking at my screen, it's dark gray, light gray, and gold. It's phenomenal. It takes away that blue and yellow. I hate the blue and yellow. But overall, a very phenomenal ship. Being able, like, I was able to get like 128 SCUs on pretty comfortably. But I think it's quoted at 128 SCUs. And so there's some debate on how to Tetris, the boxes and how to get the most out of, the back. Maybe I'll create a video. I'm sure somebody else has already done so. But it will require a little bit of extra work in order to get the CL completely outfitted. So again, the Zeus, going back to the poll, the Zeus is probably the main reason why we have people wanting to test out 324.2. And honestly, probably the most excitement going into CitizenCon for the next week, whenever this does finally release. So, again, there's much excitement with the MFDs and the HUDs, and that's fine. But for me, it's one of those things that I don't want. If I know CIG listens, I want to be careful with this. I don't want to take away from that work. It's they're doing the God's, or the Lord's work at this point. But you're gonna experience it for like the first time. It'll be new for like a day, and then by the second or third day, you're kind of over it. It's not like this massive change. It's a change that needed to happen, but it's kind of over and done with. So the ship, I think the Zeus, is going to be one of the main reasons why we're excited about 324.2. All right, a couple more questions that I asked about 324.2. Server wipe. So given 324.2 uses the new 4.0 code base, do you think we'll see a full wipe or not until 4.0 release? So again, specifically, it's using the new 4.0 code base. Does that merit a full server wipe? And so 17.3% say yes. So a very small number says yes, it's going to be wiped at 324.2. But over or almost 70% says yes, they're going to reset in 4.0. Now we know beyond a shadow of a doubt they will reset servers when 4.0 launches. With server meshing and everything else, it's going to be a mass reset. We know that that's going to be the case. So just wanted to break that out. Let's see what else we have here. I should have left this. I should have ended the Zeus conversation with this poll, but the Zeus reaction, for those of you able to test the RSI Zeus, has it met your expectations? Tell us why in the comments. This had 127 votes and a perfect breakout, or perfect even distribution of 40.2% says it exceeds their expectation, 40.2% says it meets their expectations. Now there is about 20% that says it does not meet their expectations. I would love to get into the whys. There were only 5 comments. Out of 127 votes, only 5 comments. No one really went into the why it doesn't meet their expectations, but I would love to hear more, especially after 324.2 goes live. I would love to hear more about reactions about the Zeus. And then here is my tinfoil hat. And this will actually bleed into the namesake of today's episode. We're calling this the final patch in Star Citizen. So the question is, let us go on record this morning. What do you think drops today? This was Thursday. What do you think drops today? So 324.2 live in the PU, server meshing in the tech preview, both or neither. And I put womp womp. So for all you salties out there, I gave you an option. 39.2% said server meshing in the tech preview. They would end up being right. 25% say 324.2 live in the PU. 19.2% said neither. 16.7% said both. Okay. Again, every indicator from what I was looking at said that 324.2 was very close. If it's not today, if it's not Friday, it's going to be over the weekend, early next week. It's got to release before CitizenCon. Has to. Okay. The last patch in Star Citizen. Here's why I called it that. It's not clickbait. It's not. I didn't put it there to get likes and attention and to get people to tap into it. When I say this is the last patch, I already called an episode a couple episodes ago, Star Citizen as we knew it. After 324.2 drops, you will not recognize this game ever again. Ever again. And I don't want to be overly dramatic. I'm not trying to be anything other than the 12 years that we have led up to this point. They're gone. The rear view mirror, no one's looking back at it. It's over. Server meshing is possible, and I was there yesterday to see it happen. We maxed out at 1,700. Again, I've seen higher numbers, but me personally, we maxed out at over 1,700 on a single shard. So one gaming instance had 1,700 people in it. Right now on live PU, it's 100, and you're easy, or you're happy if you get even that. Usually it's 70 or 80 individuals. 1,700 people were inside of one game instance. And so now you talk about servers. So that breakout that I'm talking about, it was a 6. No, this was the 10. This was the 10 to 2,000 ratio. So one shard, 10 dedicated game servers or DGSs, 10 servers with a cap of 2,000, all happening at the same time, and it worked. Now we can debate the definition of worked. Was it at point, or was it at some points PowerPoint Star Citizen? Absolutely. The screens were very choppy at points. But seeing hundreds of people line up to get onto a train was a very, very incredible experience. Watching hundreds, if not thousands of people gather on the New Babbage Lake around an 890 jump is insane to me. And that's it. Like, this is the last patch that is dropping that is going to feel familiar. When 4.0 launches, we're doubling, if not more. We're doubling the frontiers. We're expanding the experience. It's going to take hopefully 2,000 people. Maybe it's 1,000, but they're going to take 2,000 people and spread it out across 2 systems, Pyro and Stanton. But that experience, I don't know. I can't, even as a podcaster, even as somebody who claims and thinks that they're a good orator, I can't explain yesterday. It was something that you've never experienced before, at least in Star Citizen, where you walk out of your hab and there are 20, 30 people waiting to get on the elevator. That's crazy to me. It's absolutely crazy to me. So we could be looking at today, over the weekend, the last patch. We get in, hey, this is great, awesome, testing. But once Pyro drops with server meshing, I think Star Citizen actually becomes the game that it wanted to be. It wanted to be when it grew up. It took 12 years to do it, but it's finally maturing into its place. And so that also brings up some questions, right? Like, I don't know. It brings up some questions. How is this going to work? So we had, again, over 1,700 people spawning into 4 locations. 4, right? So in this test, it was only Stanton, and the only 4 places you can choose to spawn in on are the capital cities, or the main cities. So, New Babbage, Area 18, Orison, right? And I don't want to say Lorville, but freaking Hurston. But you cram that many people into a server. So like New Babbage, when I logged in, was over 400 people. So 400 people at the least were trying to log into New Babbage at the same time. There's only so many apartments or habs, and then you've got to queue up for the elevator, and then you got to go down the elevator without dying or hurting each other, and then you have to queue up for the train, and then you have to queue up for the elevators to get onto the spaceport, and then obviously your hangars. So I think it only really has to happen once. Like I think the initial release of a server or of a shard is going to be very messy, and it's going to take time for things to kind of settle. But then once it does settle, we go back to our old habits. We go to a spaceport like Seraphim Station, make that your home, make that your login. You also have Pyro at that point, so how many of that 2,000 are going to choose a location in Pyro as a spawn point? So I think it'll work itself out. But the queues, right, the lines to do anything, is basically my is my question. Is how does Star Citizen intend to do this? They're building Star Citizen around the tech of server meshing, but I think the actual mechanisms in the game aren't. And that's not a challenge to the developers. It's just everything's queue based, right? So you pull your ship in your hangar. You're put into a queue. You call ATC, air traffic control. You call ATC and you're put in a queue. Imagine that queue with 2,000 people. Everything has a queue, right? Everything that we do in Star Citizen has a queue. So what does this do to those dynamics or those game loops? So again, it might sound a little hyperbolic to say this is the final patch in Star Citizen. Of course, we're going to have 4.0, 4.1, 4.2. Of course, we're going to have that. And then straight into 1.0 when the thing goes live. Which, I'm going to say it right now because it's on top of my mind. They've been talking 4.0 and 1.0. So there's no 5.0, there's no 6.0. Could there be? Maybe, I don't know. But as of right now, it's 4.0, and what they're talking about, even on the schedule for CitizenCon, is 1.0. So like Pyro is it. Once they prove the use case, or once they prove the tech and the capability of launching a whole nother system, I think from there it just becomes almost like expansions when 1.0 goes live. I can see 1.1 being Nyx, 1.2 being, Terra, 1.3, etc. Moving on. I can see that being the case. After Pyro, I think Pyro is the last use case. Get server meshing, the static server meshing, get dynamic server meshing, good to go with Pyro. And once that is done, enter 1.0 and this thing goes live, and the rest is history. Okay, off of that soapbox. Let's see what we got here. Server meshing. All right, so I'm not going to read this. This is actually the server meshing test Delta after action report. So this is Saturday. This is last Saturday. The results from October 2nd. This is not yesterday. So if you want to go into the form categories general, again, server meshing test Delta after action report, basically all to say they landed on a scale of 4 to 500. So 4 DGSs or dedicated game servers to a player cap of 500. That was a very stable experience. And so the purpose, let me just keep sharing my screen. The purpose of yesterday's tech preview is this right here, right? So test Echo. So quickly, we already talked about the results, my feelings, my reactions to everything, but this is the actual patch note for it. Just quickly, it started off with one server with a 100 player cap that lasted for a couple of seconds. Honestly, it was super smooth. I had like a 20 to 25 server frames per second with all 100 people in, which is what we have currently in the live PU. So to see that at 25 frames per second on the server side, phenomenal. 4.0 build is phenomenal. But then they immediately just ripped the Band-Aid off and they went all the way to, it was 6 to 1,000. So 6 DGSs or servers, this is a lot, 6 DGSs or servers to a player cap of 1,000. And that actually went halfway decent. A little bit of stuttering, but that was the cool, moment where everybody was like, this is happening. We did it. We broke 1,000 or we hit 1,000. A couple of hot fixes were identified or changes to the build were identified. I stayed very close to the conversation with Waka, and Benoit was also in that chat as well. Kind of, here's what we discovered and here's the fix for it that's going in. But then the excitement happened. they were like, let's just rip everything apart. Not the Band-Aid. Let's just rip limbs off of this thing and see if we can survive. They announced that they were going to go with a 10 to 2,000. So 10 DGSs or servers with a player cap of 2,000. And it was like, buckle up. This shit's going down. And we knew it was going to be very problematic, and it was. I had the infinite loading screen probably twice, and had to figure out kind of back end ways to get around it, but I was finally able to get in. Y'all saw my screenshot, or at least 6,000 impressions later. Some of you have seen my screenshot, where again it's 1,700 inside of the shard, over 400 at New Babbage. Incredible. I think they're landing the plane, though. If I were to guess, I think they're landing the plane on this playtest at that 6 to 1,000. They might back off a little bit. They might back off to, that 4 to 500 from the last test. But I think if they're going to have a stretch goal, that 6 DGSs to 1,000 head count, I think that's where they launch 4.0. So I think they're there. My personal opinion, without getting into the after action review for yesterday, I think they're ready to launch server meshing in 4.0. Is it broken? Fuck yeah. But that didn't stop them in 3.18. So not to bring up that dead horse. Okay, so now we have some other things to get through. I don't know. We've been doing this for an hour already, I think. But we do have other news to get to. Excuse me. On October 7th, quickly, on October 7th, that is your Q4 buyback token. It's live, so you have, I think it's 1 or 2. I have 2. I don't really know why. Is that a subscriber thing or is that a concierge thing? I don't remember. I think it's a subscriber. If you're an Imperador subscriber, you get 2 buybacks. Regardless, you get your buyback tokens as of October 7th, and you have all the month. Pro tip: hold on to everything. Don't buy a damn ship until IAE. No matter how sexy an offering is from CitizenCon, unless it is a CitizenCon specific, like you got to get this now in order to get a CitizenCon paint or something, unless it is so exclusive to CitizenCon, save everything, your money, your buyback tokens, until IAE. IAE is in November. It's the sister to my shirt that I'm wearing. I have Invictus Launch Week. I have this shirt on. It's the sister to it, but every single ship in the game goes on sale, and it's 120-month insurance. So it's the one time to get 10 years worth of insurance. So save literally everything. But with that, Freyja, good old community manager over there, also shared out the 2025 buyback token schedule. So if you're a member of Soul Provision, if you're a member of Soul Provision, this is forever in our event schedule. It's in our FAQ, so you have access to this. You don't have to remember that it exists. But the 2025 schedule for Q1 is January 6th, Q2 is April 7th, Q3 is July 7th, and Q4 is October. So for those of you who obsess over buybacks and like spending the money and then buying back, I'll say this once and I'll say it probably a million more times. If you have the money, let's pretend that we all have the money. You spend $3,000 on the Javelin. Get you that Javelin, get it, but then melt the shit out of it. Immediately melt it and put that $3,000 into your store credit, and then live off of that $3,000 in store credit. Get the new ships when they come out. You can get 5, 10, 20 ships for $3,000. Hopefully more than 5. But you can get all, and just survive the entire time up until Star Citizen 1.0. But then when ships release, like in Q4, we're going to see the Polaris. If Polaris is one of the ships that you melted to use that money on other ships, we are now at the point where the Polaris is releasing. So use your buyback token to then get that Polaris back. And so you've been able to play the game, you've been able to play all with the new ships and get, exposure to everything else. But now you've got the money to go back and get the Polaris using these buyback tokens. That is my personal approach to handling the money in Star Citizen. I'm almost at Legatus, so you can make that, with what you will, with how much money I've spent. But I don't know. My advice, and hopefully that helps you out. In other news, CitizenCon. So tomorrow I'll be guest hosting on Space Tomatoes podcast, and it's super early tomorrow morning. It's like 5 a.m. my time. But we'll go over our reactions to this very specifically. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. I encourage you to listen to that podcast when it publishes. But me and Space Tomato Keenan, we're going to be putting on our tinfoil hats and looking at the schedule. So again, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but here's your CitizenCon 2954 event schedule and early registration. Don't care about early registration. I'm not going to go, so I'm skipping that. Here is your event map and schedule. So I've got my big screen sharing. I hope you can see this. I think I'm tucked away in the bottom right hand corner, so you should be able to see everything. But here we go. So for day 1, the venue opens up at 9 a.m. That's like my 3 a.m. Central Time, so I don't know. I'll try my best to see it or be part of it, but let's look at the first day. So the first event or the first segment is Brave New Worlds. So introducing Genesis. It's this new tech that they're going to get into. I can't wait to see it. They kind of did the same thing at the beginning of last CitizenCon, where they went through like the future of gaming, and they went through like what Star Citizen is and its potential. Then you've got a social universe. Awesome. Then you get a social universe, and this is basically how. And I wish I need to like. How can I zoom in on this? It's a little better. So I'm trying to see like how much bigger I can make this. So the social universe, a lot of people are saying this is about org play, right? Like how do you interact within Star Citizen? Because right now it's broken. Like right now it sucks. It sucks to have to hit F11 to open up like your in-game chat and friend invitations and all that. You can hit F12 and have your typical general chat open on the left-hand side, but I hate having that open. Plus 324.2 has weird chromatic aberration on it, and it makes it look very like almost like 3-dimensional. I hate that shit. So I don't know, that's a distraction. I don't like it, but just overall communicating and executing things inside of Star Citizen is kind of a nightmare. So I can't wait to see what they talk about in a social universe. If you're part of Soul Provision and you've been part of our org nights, communication is hard, and it's going to be hard regardless of what they implement, but communication is hard when you're doing Jump Town, when you're doing Xenothreat, or really anything else. So it'll be very interesting to see what this looks like. Orgs will figure it out. Like I think Soul Provision, I think we figured it out using Discord comms, but I think the general chat, like if I'm playing by myself and I just want to become part of somebody's Xenothreat raid, or I want to be part of somebody's Jump Town, I think that is what I'm talking about as far as opportunity. Like how does that work? It's very difficult. You have to be invited to like their Discord or maybe the in-game comms, which is broken most of the time. Like how do you effectively become a positive impact on another operation in this game? All right, so the third event is the 2954 cosplay competition. Super awesome. And then Dress to Kill. So this is like fashion, clothing, armor, everything moving forward in the game. So Groza, shout out. I know this is all about you and what you're interested in, but it's funny. Elder Scrolls Online, we had a saying when we were creating content, but the true end game is fashion. So like you played the game and did raids so that you could get that special armor, or you get that special, adornment that you put, in your hair or on your outfit. So I don't know, like you can almost see it that way. I think base building personally would be my end game. But a lot of people are going to see fashion and things that you wear on a day-to-day basis as their end game. And then the second to last event on this schedule is Beyond Pyro. So specifically it says, to the fantastic reaches beyond Stanton and Pyro, join us as we explore the exciting new frontiers of Star Citizen. Whew. What is going to happen then? And that's 4:30 p.m. Manchester time. Right? What do you think? What do you think? Nyx? Do you think it's a series of planets? Is it just one system, or maybe two systems, or is it a bunch of systems? What are your predictions for Beyond Pyro? Okay. And then at 5:30, it's a huge redacted. So from 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m., there's a redacted session. Last year for CitizenCon, this redacted section was the Pyro playtest. I 150 billion% believe this is the Squadron 42 playtest. First off, I think the whole theme of this is probably going to end up being Squadron 42. They're in a Bengal carrier. The decorations are going to be Squadron 42. Most things will be tailored around that, in my personal opinion. Squadron 42 is going to have a playtest. And what that means for those of us at home, I have no idea. I can't imagine it would be an early access. I can't imagine they would allow us to test Squadron 42. I think there's a whole marketing push, a PR push that needs to happen. So I don't think that's going to be us, unfortunately. I think it's going to be those that are physically there at Manchester who are absolutely going to be able to play Squadron 42. My personal opinion. Let's talk about day 2. So for day 2, 10 a.m. is crafting your home. We get into base building. Yes, my end game. I can't be more excited about base building. This is it. So y'all have heard me a couple episodes ago get into No Man's Sky. Like, building in No Man's Sky is what I spend 95% of my time doing. I have a capital ship that has a base on it, and I have a planet side base, and I build the shit out of those two things and enjoy it. But when I think of Soul Provision and us executing org missions and raids, our home base, like that, I fantasize about what that experience can be like. Having 200 members of Soul Provision walking around a collective base. So I have a frontier. I don't know, I'm having like a brain fart. I think it's the frontier. I have the frontier, so I have an 8 kilometer by 8 kilometer space that I can call home. And I think I find a location, set that up as a home base. But then most of our org has said, yeah, pick out the place and we'll build around you. Like, we're going to have a freaking whole side of a planet, for Soul Provision at some point. Like, I can't wait for what that looks like and feels like. I am most excited about base building. And then they get into Captains of Industry. Those are the ships and the tools needed to build bases. So exciting there. And then the last, like 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Well, 12 o'clock to 2:30. The Stars My Destination. Star Citizen 1.0. So for 2.5 hours, they're going to be talking about the future of Star Citizen. So on day 1, it's Beyond Pyro as far as systems and stuff goes. But this will be the future of Beyond like 4.0 and what it means for launches, tech expectations, and what will go into Star Citizen 1.0. What I hope to get out of this, the Star Citizen 1.0, is what is their minimum viable product? What is their MVP? I want to know that. That helps me backwards plan. That helps me prioritize like what I do research on as a content creator. I would love to know what they determine is the lowest bar that they will accept to launch Star Citizen 1.0. And it looks like we're going to get that on day 2. So I think it's incredible. I think it's going to be a very fun day. Unfortunately, of course, I'm probably not going to watch it live because it's Manchester time. I'm here with you. So we'll see what happens. It'll be a game time decision that I don't know. I might actually be crazy enough to do it. I went ahead and shared, I'm going to share with you on this podcast the 2 kind of teasing tweets that they have posted, or CIG has posted for CitizenCon. This is super fast. So this first one, it's a potential new ground asset. So they said the sun shines bright, #sneak peek, and it looks like the back end of a ground vehicle. Could be a ground vehicle, it could be a ship, but the way it looks, it almost looks as if it is a ground asset. So maybe like these, again, you have to be watching my screen. But if you see where I'm kind of like hovering over, it looks like wheel welds, maybe. Here at the bottom center, it almost looks like a ladder, or it looks like maybe a storage location. Again, I can't really make that out. But this top part is what gives it away. For me personally, it gives it away as like a ground vehicle. It's very narrow, like you would see like at the back end of a Cyclone, or the back end of I'll leave it at Cyclone. I was gonna say Ursa, but those are pretty wide in the back. But again, it looks like a ground asset. So there was this guy, and then there is this video, this little doozy. Okay, Squadron 42 monthly report. I'm not gonna read it. I'm just gonna show it to you, and I'm gonna show you just how small it is. Guys, Squadron 42 is the theme of CitizenCon, and we are getting a release date at CitizenCon. Next weekend, we will know the release date of Squadron 42. You can quote me on that. Promise you. Watch this. Watch how short this is. I'm going to click and drag. Ready? Still not there. Still not there. We're just now starting and we're halfway down the bar. AI tech, AI social strike team, animation, art, gameplay, story, narrative, visual effects. Done. This is it. You guys are watching my screen. This is the entire monthly report. Now, this does not mean that they're done and they're not doing anything to it, right? So if you're familiar with game development, there's still a lot of work to be done. So maybe it is done through the polishing phase, but they are now entering in all the public relations and marketing. Now they're entering in creating all the assets needed to be reviewed, to be pushed out on commercials. Like, this is going to be a huge endeavor. So it's not like they're completely done. There's a lot of work to be done to finish up polishing if there is, as well as getting things ready for the market. Next year is going to be interesting. They're going to have to compete with Grand Theft Auto 6. So however or whenever they decide to launch, I guarantee you some smart dude in CIG or dudette, somebody smart over in CIG is sitting down thinking, oh crap, well, when is GTA 6 coming out? Let's not release it in the same quarter as GTA 6. Or at least they should be. Last but not least, the Idris. Interesting. Why would there be a lore deep dive on a ship that's been flyable since March, so close to CitizenCon? Y'all know me. I lean to the white knight. I lean towards being overly optimistic, but I love my hot takes, and that's probably why Space Tomato wants me on his podcast tomorrow morning. But like, I don't know, all the signs are indicative that the Idris is very soon. A couple of talking points here. Number one, it was flyable back in March or whenever they were doing the Xenothreat raid. It was flyable back then. You could board it. There was a whole community event on getting on it and controlling it for as long as you could. And then there was the Xenothreat raid where it existed. You could take it over and fly it and take out other Idrises. So it's flyable. The interior is ready. The exterior is ready. They're good to go. Now, it's going to require its own server. So my hot take is that it probably needs to be in 4.0 because of the need for it to be a DGS, a dedicated game server. It needs to be its own server. The max crew is 28 players. So you're going to have 28 players with all the entities and object containers needing to be registered, replication layer and the entity graph all being referenced. Like, it's going to need its own server, and that's not in existence in this current moment. So I truly believe that. However, what is the Polaris going to be challenged with? Right? So when the Polaris releases, there's nothing that can take it out. And I'm talking ship versus ship, not necessarily a ship versus, 100 Fury MXs. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Polaris versus a Hammerhead. The Polaris wins hands down, right? The Polaris versus a fully staffed 890 jump, hands down, Polaris wins. The Polaris is going to need something to fight. And this is where, tinfoil hat, they did say the Idris had to be launched with Squadron 42. But how many times in the 12 years that CIG has existed have they pivoted from a promise? So I say to hell with that promise. It means nothing to me. That promise that it's coming out with Squadron 42, I don't know. I hold that with as much water as I hold any other promise. That's not a weird attack on CIG. It's just, they can change it. Why not? I think we see the Idris this quarter. I do. I think this is the grand surprise. I think it's very, very possible if we see 324.2 launch either today, over the weekend, or next week. We see 4.0 launch after CitizenCon, let's say during IAE, like November or December. I think the Idris is like a Christmas special. I do think they're like, hey, 4.0 launched, and with it, here's the damn Idris. This is possible. All signs are indicative. The lore drop is here, and it is. It echoes Jump Point 8.6, right? So, I mean, it's not like it's new lore, but this attention to put it out there, it's got to be fueled. It's got to be coming from somewhere, in my opinion. So if you're interested in learning more about the Idris, this lore deep dive does exist. So spacecraft development, the civilian version launches, the civilian examples. If any of that interests you, it's available in the Whitley's guide. Before we wrap this up, we have got to get to our Day of the Vara giveaway. As promised, I show you how we make the soup. So we're gonna look at the raw data. In fact, let me go ahead and share my screen for us. This is the raw data. I have hidden columns. The only thing I've done is I've hidden columns that could dox our entries. And out of 163 entries, I absolutely do not want to do that. So here we go. You're gonna see my beautiful mind just like I did for Pirate Week's giveaway. I'm going to do it here as well. So I'm simply going to create a column next to number. I'm going to call this, let's just do rank. We'll do rank. Let's go ahead and highlight this whole entire thing. I don't know, let's make it yellow, just so it stands out among the rest. I'm going to use a very simple equation called random. So RAND. It's going to give me a random number from like point infinity to the integer 1, all numbers in between. So I'm simply just going to do this. Rand, open parentheses, close parentheses, boom. It spits out a number 0.8, right? And I'm going to copy this all the way down, but every time I modify this cell, it'll change the calculation. So I'm going to drop it all the way down. It changed the calculation. I'm going to go ahead and make this 2 decimal points, but now I've got to make it a text, not the equation, so it doesn't randomize when I resort. So Control C, Control V, again it recalculated, but now I'm saving it as a number, and there you go. So now this is a static number. It will not change when I resort the entire table. I am going to highlight all entries, and then I'm going to do data. I'm going to do sort. I'm going to sort by that rank number, and I'm going to do the highest to smallest. And here is our winner. So drum roll. Wait, I have an idea. Drum roll. The winner of the 2024, the 2954 Day of the Vara giveaway from Beyond the Verse Star Citizen podcast is, let's do this, Carbon. So Carbon, you are the winner at 0.9938130. So congratulations, Carbon. You're walking away with the Anvil Terrapin, its Purple Haze paint, lifetime insurance, and the game package for Star Citizen. And like we did last time, let's read the entry. Their answer to the most frightening memory they have had in Star Citizen, either done to you or have done to others, in 280 characters or less. Here's the response. Afraid of getting yeeted by physics every single time I stepped into any elevator in 317, especially if someone else was there with you. The fear was real. 100%. So congratulations, Carbon. So if you want to become part of the conversation, you can do so emailing us at contact@beyondtheversehq.com. On all of our socials, it's /BTV_cast. Our YouTube is /BTV_cast. And if you want to become part of our in-game organization, Soul Provision, you can do so at www.robertspaceindustriescom/orgs/provision. As always, I hope this finds you well. If you're traveling to CitizenCon, do so safely. And for the rest of us, safe travels as you traverse beyond the verse. Take care, everybody.